Everything you think you know about World War III is wrong, dangerously wrong. The movies lied to you. The news networks lied to you. Your government definitely lied to you. And if war starts in the next 12 months, which intelligence assessments now put at 43% probability, your misconceptions will kill you faster than enemy action. I know this because I spent 11 years as a Navy SEAL conducting operations in places your government claims we were never operating. I have sat in classified briefings where senior military leadership wargamed the first 72 hours of peer adversary conflict. I have read threat assessments that would make you physically ill. And what I am about to tell you contradicts everything civilians believe about modern warfare, because the actual doctrine is so horrifying that no administration will ever publicly acknowledge it. Drop Hollywood. In the comments, if you think WW3 looks like soldiers fighting soldiers. Drop reality. If you already suspect civilians are the primary targets. Because what I'm going to reveal in the next 28 minutes is the hour-by-hour breakdown of what actually happens when superpowers go kinetic. Not speculation, not fear-mongering. Operational reality based on documented military doctrine, recent proxy war observations, and the simple physics of modern weapon systems. And I need you to understand something critical before we start. The purpose of modern warfare is not destroying enemy militaries. That is secondary. The purpose is destroying civilian will to resist by making normal life impossible. Every major power understands this. Every war plan reflects this. And when the shooting starts, you will not be collateral damage. You will be the primary target. Let me establish credibility, because you should never trust anyone on the internet without verification. Naval Special Warfare Operator. 11 years active duty, multiple deployments I cannot discuss in detail, but you can verify service through SEAL community networks if you know people. I am not revealing classified information. I am connecting publicly available doctrine, observable geopolitical patterns, and basic military logistics that anyone with operational experience understands, but civilians never consider. The gap between what you think happens and what actually happens is so vast that bridging it requires complete deconstruction of your assumptions. Here is assumption number one that will get you killed. You think war starts with a declaration, with warnings, with diplomatic breaking points that give you time to prepare. Wrong. Modern warfare starts with infrastructure destruction, while diplomats are still talking. Hour zero is not when governments announce hostilities. Hour zero is when the lights go out, when your phone stops working, when water stops flowing from your tap. And you will not know it is warfare. You will think it is a blackout, a technical failure, a coincidence. By the time you realize you are under attack, 16 to 20 hours will have passed, and every system you depend on for survival will be offline or compromised. Let me paint hour zero for you. It is a Tuesday in February. You wake up at 6 a.m. Your phone alarm does not go off because overnight, GPS satellites that provide timing signals to cellular networks were disabled through kinetic anti-satellite weapons and cyber intrusion. Your phone is searching for signal, but finding nothing. You think it is your carrier having problems. You go to turn on the lights. Nothing. You think it is a circuit breaker. You check your breaker box. Everything looks fine. You try your neighbor. His power is out too. You think it is a grid failure. Local problem. Crews will fix it. You try to call the utility company. Your phone has no signal. You try to drive to work. Your car starts if it is older than 2015. If it is newer with electronic engine management tied, the cellular networks for over-the-air updates, it may or may not start depending on how the attack affected vehicle systems. You drive toward work. Traffic lights are out. Gas stations are dark. Stores are closed. And you still think this is a technical problem because your brain cannot process that you are in hour 3 of World War III. This is not theoretical. This is exactly what doctrine calls for, and exactly what recent conflicts have demonstrated. Ukraine, February 2022. First strikes were cyber attacks on government systems and power infrastructure. Kinetic strikes followed targeting electrical substations, water treatment facilities, and communication nodes. Civilian populations were functionally paralyzed before most people understood hostilities had started. Israeli operations against Hezbollah and Hamas demonstrated preemptive communications disruption through pager and radio attacks that destroyed command capability while populations were still going about normal routines. These are proof-of-concept operations demonstrating what peer conflict looks like. Scale it up to continental United States. Multiply coordination by 1,000. Understand that every adversary has studied these operations and refined tactics. Here is assumption number 2. You think you will get information. Government emergency broadcasts. News coverage. Official guidance. Wrong. Information systems are primary targets because informed populations are hard to control and panic. Taking down civilian information access creates chaos that overwhelms government response capability and prevents organized resistance. The doctrine is explicit. Degrade communications immediately to prevent coordination. Let populations panic individually rather than organize collectively. In the first 24 hours, you'll have no reliable information about what is happening, why it is happening, or what to do. Every decision you make will be based on incomplete data and fear. This is intentional. Let me walk you through the actual timeline based on war game scenarios that senior leadership has run dozens of times. These are not my opinions. These are synthesized from observable patterns, publicly available military doctrine documents, and logical extension of capabilities that adversaries demonstrably possess. Hour 0 to Hour 4 is infrastructure disruption. Cyber attacks on power grid, water systems, financial networks, and communications. Kinetic attacks on critical substations and satellite systems if adversary has capability and willingness to escalate immediately. GPS jamming across large regions. Internet backbone disruption through targeted fiber cuts and router compromise. The goal is creating maximum disruption with minimal attribution. You wake up to no power, no phones, no internet, no way to know what is happening. Hour 4 to Hour 8 is panic escalation. Populations realize this is not normal outage. Stores get rushed. Gas stations with backup generators get swarmed until they run out of fuel. Banks are inaccessible because ATMs require network connectivity. Traffic becomes gridlock as people try to get home or get supplies. Emergency services are overwhelmed. Police and fire departments are responding to thousands of simultaneous calls with degraded communications. Hospitals are going to back up power, but supply chains are already disrupted. And remember, this is all happening while most people still do not know they are under attack. They think this is infrastructure failure. Severe, yes. Unprecedented, yes. But fixable, not warfare. Hour 8 to Hour 12 is where government finally acknowledges something is happening. Not necessarily that it is warfare. They cannot say that without certainty, and they do not want to cause panic. So statements are vague. Major incident. Technical disruption. Investigating causes. Restore services as quickly as possible. Stay calm. Stay home. These statements do nothing except confirm that nobody is in control. By Hour 12, you've been without power, communications, and information for 12 hours. Stores are empty or closed. Gas is unavailable. Your food in the fridge is warming. If you are on municipal water, pressure is dropping or gone because pumps require electricity. If you're on well water with electric pump, you have no water. Toilets do not flush after the tank empties once. Sewage systems are backing up in urban areas because lift stations are offline. This is where civilian casualties start accumulating not from violence, but from system dependencies. People on oxygen concentrators die when backup batteries drain. Diabetics cannot get insulin because pharmacies are closed and refrigeration is failing. Dialysis patients miss treatments because clinics have no power and cannot operate equipment. Nursing homes and hospitals are operating on backup generators, but fuel supplies are finite. Within 12 hours, medical infrastructure is in crisis mode. And this is all before any kinetic military action targets civilian areas. This is just from infrastructure disruption. What I am about to say will anger people who believe government will protect them. If you are ready for uncomfortable truth about priority systems during crisis, hit the like button right now. Here it is. Government continuity of operations plans prioritize government survival, not civilian survival. Backup systems exist for command and control, for military operations, for maintaining authority. The emergency broadcast system everyone thinks will provide guidance, it depends on the same infrastructure that just got taken down. The strategic petroleum reserve everyone thinks will provide fuel, it has to be transported and distributed through systems that require electricity and communications. FEMA supplies everyone thinks will arrive, they are staged in warehouses that require functioning logistics networks to move. In the first 24 hours, you are on your own whether you acknowledge it or not. Hour 12, hour 16 is confirmation that this is warfare. News trickles through whatever communications still function. Ham radio operators. Satellite phones for those who have them. Hand-crank radios picking up scattered AM broadcasts. The information is fragmented, but the pattern is clear. This is happening nationwide. Multiple cities. Multiple states. This is coordinated. This is attack. And that is when psychology shifts from confusion to fear. People start making desperate decisions. They try to flee cities not understanding that evacuation without functioning infrastructure is suicide. Roads are gridlocked. No fuel available. No food. No water. No shelter. Urban environments become death traps not from bombs, but from density and dependency. Let me explain why cities specifically are targeted through infrastructure disruption rather than kinetic strikes. It is more effective and less politically costly. Bomb a city, and you create international outrage and hardened resolve. Cut power and water to a city, and let population density create the casualties through panic, disease, and violence. Populations turn on themselves. Government gets blamed for failure to protect. International community has harder time assigning responsibility because infrastructure can be blamed on cyber attacks without clear attribution. This is fourth-generation warfare doctrine. Make the population ungovernable by destroying the systems that make governance possible. Hour 16 to hour 20 is when kinetic strikes begin if adversary chooses escalation. But these are not striking population centers directly. These are striking refining capacity, port facilities, transportation hubs, strategic reserves. The goal is ensuring that even if power is restored, the economy cannot function. No fuel production, no imports, no distribution. By hour 20, even as some electrical grid segments come back online, there is no fuel to transport food, no way to receive international supplies, no capacity to restore normal function. The damage is already catastrophic, and it was achieved with minimal direct violence. Pause here. We are at hour 20 of the first 24 hours of World War III. Power is mostly down nationwide. Communications are spotty or absent. Water systems are failing. Food distribution has stopped. Medical infrastructure is in crisis. Fuel is unavailable. And we have not even discussed casualties from actual military engagement, because that is not the primary threat in modern warfare. The primary threat is systemic collapse of everything you depend on for daily survival. Most people will quit watching right here because this is too dark, too real, too far from their comfortable assumptions. If you're still here, comment hour 20 right now. Because the final 4 hours are where decisions you make determine whether you become a casualty or survivor. Hour 20 to hour 24 is triage. Government is trying to restore some capability, but they are prioritizing military operations and continuity of government. Civilian needs are secondary. FEMA is deploying, but they are overwhelmed and logistics are broken. National Guard is mobilizing, but they are dealing with civil unrest, not disaster relief. This is the window where you either have preparation or you do not. Either you have water stored and ways to purify more, or you're drinking unsafe water and risking disease. Either you have food that does not require refrigeration or cooking, or you're going hungry. Either you have heat source that does not require electricity or natural gas, or you're dealing with exposure. Either you have medical supplies and knowledge, or you are hoping emergency services that no longer function will help you. The casualties in the first 24 hours are not from bombs. They are from dehydration, hypothermia, medical emergencies without treatment, contaminated water, accidents in the dark, violence from desperate people, and psychological breakdown. These are preventable if you understand what is coming and prepare accordingly. But preparation requires accepting that this can happen, that government cannot protect you when systems fail, and that your survival is your responsibility. Let me address the question you are thinking. Can this actually happen? Can adversaries really execute this level of coordinated infrastructure attack? Yes. Unequivocally, yes. The capabilities exist. The doctrine exists. The will exists if strategic calculus determines this is preferable to conventional warfare. China has demonstrated capabilities to compromise U.S. infrastructure through years of cyber intrusion. Russia has demonstrated willingness to target civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. Iran and North Korea have demonstrated both capability and willingness in cyber domain. These are not hypotheticals. These are observed actions. The question is not capability or intent. The question is whether strategic circumstances create conditions where this becomes preferable to maintaining status quo. And every geopolitical analyst watching Taiwan, Ukraine, Middle East, and Korean Peninsula understands we are closer to those conditions than any point since Cold War. The difference is Cold War had mutually assured destruction through nuclear weapons as deterrent. Modern warfare has mutually assured disruption through infrastructure targeting as alternative, lower threshold for initiation, higher impact on populations, less clarity on where escalation stops. Now, let me give you the survival framework for the first 24 hours, because understanding threats without actionable response creates helplessness. Your preparation breaks into 3 phases aligned with the timeline I just described. Pre-crisis preparation. Immediate response in hours 0 to 12. Sustained adaptation in hours 12 to 24. Each phase has specific actions that determine outcomes. Pre-crisis preparation means accepting this as possible and building baseline capability before systems fail. Water storage sufficient for minimum 3 days per person. Minimum 7 days is better. 30 days is ideal. Water purification capability through filters, tablets, or boiling with off-grid heat source. Food that requires no refrigeration or cooking. Canned goods, dry goods, ready-to-eat options. Enough for 3 to 7 days minimum. Heat source that does not depend on electricity or natural gas. Propane heater with indoor rating, or with stove if you are venting. Warm clothing and blankets rated for worst-case winter scenario. First aid supplies and knowledge to use them. Basic trauma care. Infection prevention. Pain management. Prescription medication stockpile beyond normal supply. Communication capability through hand crank emergency radio minimum. Ham radio if you have license and equipment. Lighting through flashlights, headlamps, and batteries stockpiled. Self-defense capability appropriate to your situation and legal jurisdiction. Cash and small bills because electronic payment systems will be down. These are not optional luxuries. These are baseline requirements for first 72 hours of infrastructure collapse. Immediate response in hours 0 to 12 is recognition and action before panic sets in. The moment you realize this is not normal outage, you act. Fill every container with water before municipal pressure fails. Bathtubs, pots, bottles. You have maybe 2 to 4 hours of pressure after power fails, depending on reservoir elevation and system design. Get water now. Secure your home. Lock doors. Close curtains or blinds. You do not want people seeing what you have when they have nothing. Inventory your supplies. Know exactly what you have and ration accordingly. Do not assume this is a 3-day event. Plan for minimum 7 days, preferably 30. Contact family members if communications still function. Establish rally point and backup communication plan, if separated. If you are away from home when this starts, decide immediately whether to shelter in place or attempt to get home. Do not wait. Traffic will become impassable within hours. If you attempt movement, go now or do not go. This is where most people fail. They wait to see what happens. They hope it gets better. They assume government will restore services soon. Every hour you wait is an hour of decreasing options. Water pressure fails. Stores empty. Roads gridlock. Panic spreads. The people who survive are the ones who recognize the pattern immediately and act decisively before the crowd realizes what is happening. This is not paranoia. This is operational tempo. You observe, orient, decide, and act fast when the threat develops. ODA loop. Every special operations unit trains this. You should apply this. Sustained adaptation in hours 12 to 24 is accepting new reality and establishing routines. Ration water strictly. Half gallon per person per day for drinking. Quarter gallon for minimal hygiene. This is survival, not comfort. Ration food. 2,000 calories per person per day. Less if you are sedentary. More if you are active. Establish security watch if you have multiple people. Someone awake at all times. People are desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. Maintain sanitation. Human waste management becomes critical within 24 hours. Bucket with trash bags and sawdust or cat litter for toilet. Dispose away from living space and water sources. Stay informed if information is available, but do not obsess. Hand crank radio twice daily for updates. Conserve batteries. Maintain routine. Sleep schedule. Meal schedule. Activity schedule. Routine prevents psychological breakdown. This is survival psychology. Structure provides purpose, and purpose provides will continue. Real talk. How many of you have 3 days of water store right now? How many have 7 days of food that requires no cooking? How many have heat source that works without electricity? Drop a flame emoji if you have all three. Drop a cold emoji if you are realizing you are not as prepared as you thought. You are not alone. 90% of population has less than 3 days of supplies. But now you know what the first 24 hours actually looks like. Now you know what you need. The question is whether you act on this knowledge or hope it never becomes relevant. What I am about to say will make optimists angry and pessimists feel validated. But neither emotion helps you survive. Here's the truth. This scenario is not certain, but it is possible. Probability is increasing annually as geopolitical tensions escalate and adversaries refine capabilities. You cannot control whether this happens. You can only control whether you are prepared if it does. Optimism without preparation is delusion. Pessimism without action is surrender. The correct mindset is sober realism paired with decisive preparation. Acknowledge the threat. Prepare rationally. Then live your life confidently because you did what was necessary. The people who survive catastrophic events are not the strongest or the smartest. They are the ones who prepared before crisis, recognized threats early, and adapted quickly when conditions changed. You can be that person. The information I just gave you is not secret. It is synthesis of publicly available doctrine, observable patterns, and operational logic. The reason most people do not know this is because most people do not want to know. They want to believe systems will hold, that government will protect them, that modern civilization is resilient enough to withstand this level of disruption. That belief is comfortable. It is also wrong. Let me address objections. I know you are thinking. First, would adversaries really attack civilian infrastructure knowing it causes mass casualties? Yes, without hesitation. Every major power has demonstrated willingness to inflict civilian suffering when strategic goals justify it. The calculus is cold. Civilian casualties from infrastructure collapse are harder to attribute to direct action than bombing cities. International law is ambiguous, and populations that cannot meet basic needs cannot support prolonged war effort. This is brutal logic, but it is a logic that drives war planning in every major capital. Second, would this not trigger nuclear response? Possibly, but that is what makes infrastructure attacks attractive. They sit below the threshold of automatic nuclear retaliation because they can be characterized as cyber attacks, as technical failures, as accidents. Attribution is difficult. Proportionality is unclear. Nuclear response to infrastructure attack risks escalation, the full exchange which nobody wins. So infrastructure attacks create strategic paralysis. They inflict catastrophic damage without triggering the ultimate response. This is escalation management. Stay below nuclear threshold while maximizing impact on adversary capability. Third, cannot military defend against this? No, not effectively. Military can defend military assets. They can maintain their own communications and power through hardened systems. But civilian infrastructure is too vast, too interconnected, and too vulnerable. Thousands of substations, millions of miles of fiber optic cable, countless network nodes. You cannot defend everything. Adversaries know this. They target what cannot be defended and what creates maximum disruption. Military doctrine calls this asymmetric warfare. Attack where enemy is weak and cannot effectively respond. Now, let me give you the second-order effects that happen beyond the first 24 hours, because understanding the trajectory helps you make better decisions. Week 1 is survival mode. Everyone is focused on immediate needs: water, food, security. Government is trying to restore basic services, but success is limited. Some grid segments come back online. Some communications restore, but it is sporadic and unreliable. Supply chains remain broken because distribution requires fuel and functioning logistics. Cities are being evacuated where possible, but receiving areas are overwhelmed. Refugee flows create humanitarian crisis. Disease outbreaks start in areas with water contamination and sanitation failure. Week 2 is where casualties accumulate. Medical emergencies without treatment, chronic disease patients without medications, infections from untreated injuries, waterborne diseases from contaminated sources, respiratory diseases from cold exposure, malnutrition from inadequate food, violence from resource competition. These are preventable in functioning society. They are nearly unavoidable in collapsed infrastructure. The people who survive Week 2 are the ones who prepared adequately and avoided risk through isolation and security. Week 3 is adaptation or failure. Either you have established sustainable routines and you are maintaining baseline health and security, or you are declining and entering death spiral of dehydration, malnutrition, and exposure. There is no middle ground in prolonged collapse. You either have capability or you do not. Government aid is reaching some areas, but it is inadequate and inconsistently distributed. Black markets emerge. Barter systems develop. Social order fragments into community-level organization. This is when society restructures around new reality. Month 1 is new normal. Power is restored to critical infrastructure in some regions, military and government facilities, hospitals in major cities. But residential areas remain mostly dark. Water is available through distribution points, but not from taps. Food is rationed through government channels. Fuel is allocated to essential services. Civilian movement is restricted. Martial law or equivalent is in effect in most areas. This is not recovery. This is managed collapse. And it can persist for months or years depending on scale of damage and capacity to rebuild. Let me be clear about something. I am not saying this will happen. I am saying this can happen, and probability is non-zero and increasing. Every person must make their own risk assessment and preparation decisions. What I am providing is the operational framework to understand what modern peer conflict looks like from civilian perspective. This is not entertainment. This is not fear porn. This is threat assessment based on capabilities, doctrine, and observed patterns. Your action plan is simple. Assess your current preparation level honestly. Identify gaps in water, food, heat, medical, security, and communication capability. Create prioritized lists of what you need. Allocate budget to acquire basics first. Water and food are non-negotiable. Heat is non-negotiable in cold climates. Everything else is important but secondary to survival basics. Set timeline for acquiring supplies. 30 days to get baseline capability. 90 days to get comfortable margin. Practice using your equipment. Know how to filter water before you desperately need it. Know how to operate your heat source before you are freezing. Test your plans through weekend exercises where you simulate no power, no water, no stores. Find your gaps in safe conditions. And critically, maintain operational security. Do not broadcast your preparations. Do not tell neighbors what you have. Do not post on social media. The prepared become targets when systems fail. You help people when you can, but you protect your capability first. This is not selfish. This is survival math. You cannot help anyone if you become casualty yourself. Secure your capability. Then extend help from position of strength. If you understood that modern warfare targets civilians through infrastructure rather than through direct violence, you are smarter than 95% of people who still think war looks like movies. But can you explain why infrastructure attacks are more strategically valuable than conventional military engagement? Comment your answer. I respond to the most thoughtful analysis. Honest question. What is the one preparation item you are acquiring this week based on this timeline? Water storage? Food supplies? Heat source? Communication equipment? Comment below. I read every single one. And if you think I am wrong about infrastructure being primary target in modern warfare, good. Drop your reasoning. Best comment gets pinned in detailed response with sources. Because I want you thinking critically about threats, not accepting my analysis blindly. If this video changed how you assess WW3 risk and preparation requirements, share it with one person who lives in a major city or depends on just-in-time delivery systems for daily needs. Not for me, for them. Because they deserve to understand what the opening moves of modern warfare actually look like. They deserve to know that their assumptions are wrong and their preparations are inadequate. The next video covers what happens in Week 1 through Week 4 and why most prepared people still fail. The mistakes that cost lives even when supplies are adequate. The psychological factors that break people. The security considerations that determine who keeps what they have. Hit the bell so you do not miss it. Your long-term survival strategy depends on understanding the full arc of collapse and recovery. Stay prepared. Stay informed. Or stay dependent on systems that can fail catastrophically with minimal warning. Your choice. But understand that choosing inaction is still a choice. It is a choice to trust that this will not happen or that government will save you if it does. Given current geopolitical trajectory and observable capabilities, that trust may be misplaced. I cannot make decisions for you. I can only show you what operational reality looks like from insider perspective. The rest is your responsibility. One more thing. See that progress bar? Not done yet. 99% leave before this final section. The 1% who stay get the information that ties everything together. The reason military leadership knows this is coming and why they are not telling you. Comment seal if you're still here. Welcome to the 1%. The reason leadership is not warning civilians is because warning creates the very panic that makes response impossible. If government announced that peer conflict could start in the next 12 months and civilians should prepare for infrastructure collapse, what happens? Markets crash as everyone liquidates positions to buy supplies. Stores empty within days. Supply chains collapse under surge demand. Price gouging becomes rampant. Social order breaks down before war even starts. So leadership maintains calm through silence, even though they know probability is increasing. They are hoping strategic circumstances change. They are hoping deterrence holds. They are gambling with civilian lives because they have no good options. This is why you see seemingly contradictory signals. Defense budgets increasing. Military readiness improving. Strategic weapon systems modernizing. But civilian messaging remains calm. Do not worry. Systems are stable. Threats are manageable. This is cognitive dissonance between military preparation and civilian communication. Military knows what is coming. Civilian leadership hopes it does not. And you are caught in the gap between operational reality and political messaging. What I want you to understand is that preparation is not about fear. Preparation is about agency. It is about transforming anxiety into actionable steps that restore sense of control. You cannot prevent World War III. You cannot control geopolitical tensions. But you can control whether you have water when systems fail. You can control whether you have food when stores close. You can control whether you have heat when power goes out. That control is everything. It is the difference between victim and survivor, between helpless and capable, between dependent and sovereign. The people who prepared for COVID before it was obvious were not paranoid. They were observant. They watched patterns developing, and they acted while others dismissed concerns. Those people had months of supplies when shelves emptied. They adapted quickly while others panicked. The same pattern applies here. You are watching tensions escalate. You are seeing capabilities develop. You are reading doctrine analysis. You can act now while supplies are available and preparation is routine. Or you can wait until everyone else realizes simultaneously, and then compete for scraps. I spent 11 years in naval special warfare learning to prepare for low probability, high consequence scenarios. We trained constantly for events that might never happen, because when they did happen, there was no time to prepare, only time to execute. You need the same mindset. You are not preparing because collapse is certain. You are preparing because collapse is possible and the cost of being wrong is catastrophic. The cost of being prepared if nothing happens is minimal. The cost of being unprepared if something happens is death. Let me leave you with final thought. Every person who survived historical catastrophes has the same story. They recognized patterns early. They prepared while others dismissed. They acted decisively when events unfolded. They adapted continuously as circumstances changed. You can be that person. The information exists. The supplies are available. The time is now. What separates survivors from casualties is not luck. It is decision-making under uncertainty. It is willingness to act on incomplete information. It is accepting discomfort now to avoid catastrophe later. You now know what the first 24 hours of World War III actually looks like. Not soldiers fighting. Not missiles striking cities. Infrastructure collapsing. Systems failing. Populations panicking. Government overwhelmed. You know the timeline. You know the threats. You know the preparation requirements. The only question remaining is whether you act on this knowledge or file it away as interesting but not urgent. That decision determines your outcome if probability becomes reality. I cannot force you to prepare. I can only provide the information and the framework. What you do with it is your choice. But understand that inaction is a choice with consequences. Preparation is uncomfortable. It requires admitting that comfortable assumptions might be wrong. It requires spending money on supplies you hope to never use. It requires time and effort when you are already busy. But the alternative is vulnerability, is dependency, is hope that systems hold despite every indicator suggesting they might not. Make your choice. Prepare or hope, but make it consciously, understanding what both paths mean when the lights go out and do not come back on.